Alrighty, so now it's time to set up our enemy. So just like with everything else we've set up so far, we'll hop into our sprites folder. We'll hop into the enemy explode sequence, and you'll see here that we have an enemy turn left first frame. This is what our enemy is going to look like. We will be animating this by the end of this section, and we'll be creating an awesome cinematic explosion where it actually breaks off and we have this awesome sci-fi explosion effect. It's really cool. So what I want you guys to do is, just like usual, we're going to take the first frame, drag and drop it into the hierarchy, and let's go ahead and rename this to enemy. Okay, so here's our enemy. It's a little bit big right now, honestly. Although actually maybe it's not too big. If you're okay with it, you're more than welcome to keep it that way. I may adjust the size. However, I do want to point out that not only did we just bring it into the scene by dropping it in the hierarchy, we still need to change the sorting layer. So you can see here the background is on top of the ship, like the star right there on its wing, or I'm sorry, on its turret. So what we do is we change the sorting layer to the foreground, and there you go. Now it's behind it. Now the ship can interact with the player, the power-ups, and so forth. Okay, so we're good here. We can go ahead and save our scene, just in case. And let's go ahead and maybe adjust the size of this guy just a bit, although honestly, the size might be okay. Let me go ahead and see how about 0.75 looks. A little small. 0.8. Actually, you know what, guys? I think I'm going to actually go ahead and keep mine at 1. You're more than welcome to adjust the size, but I actually think 1 is a pretty good, decent size. So check this out. Here we have our enemy, and just like everything else, we're going to be able to collide with him. We're also going to be able to shoot the enemy with our laser. So there's a couple things that need to happen. First off, our enemy must have a box collider. All right, so let's give him a box collider 2D. And right now you can see here in the scene view, if you select your enemy, focus in on it with the F key, you'll see that it's super huge. So go ahead and hit the edit collider. And let's go ahead and set his collision down to right about here so he fits nicely in the box. Give me a second. Alrighty, and like I said, get as close to the center of it as you can. So I'm happy with this. Alrighty, so my enemy is ready to go, and last but not least, go ahead and make it a trigger. Alright, that's really important. It needs to be a trigger. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and take our laser and drag that into the scene. Our laser is going to need to be able to collide with the enemy. So what does that mean? Well, two things. The laser must have a box collider 2D. So we'll go ahead and add that. And let's make it so we can see our laser. So there's the box collider. And as you can see here, the box collider mapped perfectly around the laser. So we'll go ahead and keep that there. One more thing is trigger must be checked on the laser. And last but not least, we'll add a rigid body to the laser. You're more than welcome to add it to the enemy. It really doesn't matter. It's kind of your preference. Typically what I'll do is I usually add the rigid body on who's responsible for the collision. So like the player is responsible for the collision for the power-ups. That's why I put the rigid body on the player. So for the enemy, the laser is responsible for hitting the enemy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a rigid body 2D to our laser. And I'm going to set the gravity scale to 0. Again, that's so that it doesn't just fall from the sky. We're not using any physics forces. Okay, so we should be good to go. Our laser is set up with a collider. We can go ahead and hit the apply prefab button so that it takes effect in the project view down here. You'll see here now it has a rigid body 2D and a box collider. It's important that you hit the apply prefab so that those changes are saved. Remember, we create prefabs so that we can spawn those objects. And speaking of prefabs, let's go ahead and turn our power-ups into prefabs as well, since we'll be spawning those in at a later time. And last but not least, go ahead and turn your enemy into a prefab. Essentially, anything that you're going to be spawning in your game will be a prefab. Alrighty, go ahead and save this. Okay, so I think our enemy is set up. So in the next lecture, we'll go ahead and create a challenge for you on creating the enemy behavior.